Hey, I'm Magic from OraclesElixir.com. The playoffs are just about to start. I'm super excited for all the regions, really, but a lot of people have been asking me for my opinions on the EU LCS matchups. So I want to dive in with a discussion of Misfits versus Splyce. I'm going to do a separate video on H2K versus Fnatic because I want to structure each discussion a little bit differently. So Misfits versus Splyce is really fascinating to me because some of the core characteristics of both teams and some of their win conditions that stem from those characteristics are actually really similar. I want to start off by looking at the top lane, how both teams specifically like to play through the top lane. You've got Alphari on Misfits, you've got Wunder on Splyce. Alphari is just this really impressively lane-dominant player. He gets a lot of attention from his team to enable him to control his lane, keep that side of the map really strong, and that sets up a lot of Misfits' strength in how they play the early game, or him controlling the top lane allows a lot of their bot lane tower dives through his use of teleport without losing too much on the other side of the map. These kinds of things, this is how Misfits like to structure their play. Wunder is fairly similar. Some differences in, he's not quite as strong of a laner, or at least statistically he hasn't had as high as, of say, a CS difference in 10 minutes as Alphari has had, but both teams really like to get their top laners ahead and make them a big part of how they control the game. Those two players, third and fourth in damage percent, damage share for their teams. They both get the highest share of their team's post 15-minute farm. So that just goes to show it's not just the early game and resources going into them there, but also how they set them up on the map to be successful in the mid and late game with resources. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, Alphari is a bit of a better laner, I'd say, than Wunder, but he gets more help from his jungler. Wunder had higher kill participation, so he was more involved than Alphari in the overall structure of his team's play. So it's really interesting to see just how that matchup works and which team is going to do a better job of enabling that core player. I think the supports on both teams, kind of similar ways that they contribute. They're both very active. They both move around the map, do a lot of roaming, do a lot of kind of proactivity and playmaking, and that's kind of their mindset and their role. With Ignar, Misfits, Mickey X on Splyce. This is something, looking back at Splyce last year when Mickey X joined the team for summer, it really revolutionized the way the team played and brought them from, not a very good team to one of the better teams in Europe because of his proactive mindset, his ability to make plays and add something the team didn't have much of before. And Ignar, really has been, in my opinion, the best player on Misfits through their Challenger run, definitely. I would argue probably the best player throughout this split as well for them. And he's just, what he can do on Thresh, on Bard, and Alistar, even when almost nobody was playing that champion, but he brought it out and making these plays and setting up a lot of what the team does. It's really cool to see both of those players driving a lot of the action. There's another way that these teams are really similar, which is actually that the Baron is really key for them. So here's an interesting stat. When both Misfits and Splyce take the first Baron in a game, they have never lost. They have this split. They have a 100% win rate when securing the first Baron of the game. When they give up the first Baron of the game, they also have the same win rate, both at 25%. So that's a huge difference, a huge importance on how, whether or not they secure the first Baron of the game, and it's the same for both teams. But here's where the team identities a bit kind of diverge a bit. For the Misfits, securing the first Baron really feels like it's kind of an essential part of how they close games. This is something they've been criticized a lot for by me and somewhat by other people. Something I've brought up a lot is that Misfits, when they get these early game leads from their strong laning, from their their coordinated tower dives and whatever else they do, they get these leads, they come into the mid game and they have a hard time closing out, breaking the base, finishing the game, because of some hesitance in their split pushing or other things like this, how they coordinate the lanes. They tend to be kind of gravitating towards Baron, drawn into that area. They set up around the Baron and force some action to happen there, and then if they can win a fight at Baron, secure the Baron itself, now they've got the tools they need to close the game. And it's very difficult for them to close without that Baron. They, improved their ability to set up and execute on that Baron control over the course of the split, which made the mid part of the season especially really successful for them, because now they weren't throwing at Baron as much, now they were succeeding at Baron, and that really brought things together for them. But yeah, in general, it feels like Misfits need the Baron in order to close. They're good at getting the lead. Then what happens at Baron, is kind of what decides what happens next. For Splyce, they aren't as good as Misfits at getting that early lead. They haven't been this split, at least. Part of that, the problem with that is Trashy as their jungler. He was on my ballot in summer 2016. He was an MVP candidate because he could control the early game so well. He made sure the enemy jungler couldn't get any kind of snowballs going. He counter-ganked a lot. He warded the river a lot. And that allowed Splyce to get into the mid game, which is where they're really strong, because they've got really good mid game macro. They're nice and clean, but they have a little bit of a hard time winning the lanes and getting ahead. This split, it's been a bit more of a challenge for them because of the standard lanes meta, because of the jungle meta especially. Trashy being forced to play kind of melee assassins, the Rengar and the Kha'Zix, that weren't comfortable for him, and aren't those kind of control defensive style champions. So for Splyce, they really like to get into the mid game, set up a macro game, set up a split push, whatever it is, and win through kind of clean mid and late game play. And so for them, a Baron, rather than being something that confirms their lead and allows them to close, it's something that kind of activates their mid game. They want to kind of go even or a little bit behind into the mid game. This is kind of for a very long time been their identity. And then if they can get that Baron, now suddenly their split push really comes online. Now they can bring the gold back to even or, a little bit ahead, and then they can start chipping away, getting small advantages and growing and growing and growing it. So rather than needing to confirm a lead and allow a close, they need the Baron to kind of push them over the top, get them into the position of control, and just it is the perfect the Baron buff is the perfect complement to how they prefer to play. So for both teams, Baron is really key in kind of subtly different ways. And I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how those first Barons of the game in the kind of 25 to 30 minute range play out. I think it's going to decide a lot of the way the series goes. So with those points, I'm going to make a prediction how I think the series is going to go. I think it's almost too close to call, but I'm going to give Splyce a bit of an edge for two reasons. One is they have more experience working together as a team. They've been through these LCS playoff scenarios. They've been to Worlds. And I think that's a big edge for them, whereas Misfits is, on the whole, a younger team, some really experienced veteran players, but as a team, they have a little bit, a couple of rookies and a little bit less proven nature. And the second reason is that Misfits have been on a bit of a downward trajectory lately. They haven't, they improved some of their issues through the middle of the split with their Baron control and how they executed on those setups, but they also didn't fix some of the other problems. Some of the inefficiencies in their play. They didn't secure their split push execution as much as I'd like. So I'm going to give this one to Splyce for now, but we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be really close. If you share my opinion on this matchup or have some different thoughts, leave a note in the comments. Let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe and check back tomorrow for my thoughts on H2K versus Fnatic.